Juliet, 35 years old. A number that sounds perfectly ordinary, but in her family's eyes, it has somehow become a problem. For Juliet, going home no longer feels like a reunion. It feels more like stepping into a place where she is examined, rather than loved. They don't ask if she's happy. They don't ask how hard she's been trying. The only thing they care about is, when are you getting married? And if her answer is still not yet, then everything else she's done seems to lose its value. In her family's eyes, she's the one who has fallen behind. But what they don't see is that behind her silence lies an entire life she has built on her own. And maybe the real question isn't, why isn't Juliet married yet? It's, why has her family never truly seen who she really is? During the holidays, Juliet drives back to her childhood home in the suburbs. Everything looks familiar. The lights strung across the porch, the smell of roasted turkey filling the kitchen, the laughter of children echoing from the living room. A warm, loving family. But the moment she steps through the door, the atmosphere begins to shift. "Back for the holidays? Still on your own, Jules?" her father asks, his tone half joking, half serious, but his eyes carry no softness. Her mother smiles, placing another plate on the table and says gently, "I'm just worried about you." And Thompson, her older brother, leans back in his chair, shrugs. 35 already. How long are you planning to wait?" It all unfolds like a script that repeats itself every year. No one asks about her work, her travels, or the life she's been building in the city. The conversation always circles back to one thing: marriage. Have you ever been in a room where everyone is talking, but no one is truly listening to you? Juliet takes her seat at the table, offering a polite smile, answering just enough to move things along. She's learned how to do that: nod, deflect, change the subject. Not because she has nothing to say, but because she knows that even if she does speak, they won't really hear her. And so, once again, she becomes a stranger in her own family. In Juliet's family's eyes, everything seems perfectly clear. A life that's on the right track means having a husband, having a family, having a life that others can look at and instantly understand. No explanations needed, no questions asked. And Juliet doesn't fit into that picture. She has a career, her own life, days so busy she barely has time to rest. But none of it seems to carry any weight as long as she isn't married. Have you ever felt like you've tried so hard, only to be judged for missing the one thing others believe matters most? Her father doesn't say much, but every word he speaks sounds final. To him, stability means marriage. Her mother is gentler, but she repeats it like a quiet, constant worry. And Thompson doesn't bother to soften it. To him, it's proof that Juliet is falling behind. Slowly, Juliet begins to realize it's not that they don't love her. They just love a version of her they wish she would become. And that is what exhausts her the most. Not the judgment itself, but having to live under a standard that was never truly hers. Family dinners, the place that should feel the warmest, have become the one thing Juliet wants to avoid the most. The table looks the same as always: familiar dishes, soft yellow lighting, the gentle clink of cutlery against plates. Everything seems perfect, if you don't listen too closely to what's being said. The moment someone brings up marriage, all eyes naturally turn to Juliet. No one needs to say her name. She already knows she's next. Girls your age already have kids in school. And you're still like this. Juliet sits there, hands resting lightly on the table, smiling out of reflex. Not because she agrees, but because she's grown used to keeping the peace. She nods, gives short, polite answers, then falls silent as the conversation moves on. Yet somehow never really leaves her. Each comment isn't loud, isn't harsh, but repeated often enough, it becomes a quiet pressure that never fades. And the saddest part is, no one even realizes it. To them, it's just normal concern. But to Juliet, it feels like being put on trial over and over again in her own home. Everything had been simmering for years, and finally it erupted on what seemed like a perfectly ordinary evening. That dinner felt no different from the others, until Juliet's father slammed his glass down on the table. The sharp sound cut through the room, enough to silence everyone. He looked straight at her, no trace of humour left in his voice. "If you don't get married this year, then don't come home anymore." No one laughed. No one said a word. It was as if all the air had been pulled out of the room. Have you ever heard a sentence that, in that very moment, you knew everything had changed forever? Juliet didn't react right away. She just sat there, feeling every gaze turn toward her. Her mother didn't stop him. She simply looked down, silent, as if it all made sense. Thompson leaned back in his chair, his expression indifferent, as if this outcome had always been expected. This was no longer a reminder. It was an ultimatum. And in that moment, Juliet realized a painful truth. Her family's love was being placed behind a condition. And for the first time, she didn't feel sad. Only a deep, quiet stillness. Because sometimes, what hurts the most isn't the harshness of the words, but the certainty that the person saying them believes they are absolutely right. No one spoke up. And somehow, that hurt Juliet even more than her father's words. Her mother remained seated, hands resting lightly on the table, her gaze drifting away as if avoiding what had just happened. No attempt to stop it. No quiet, "that's enough." Just silence, familiar in a way that felt almost frightening. Have you ever hoped someone would speak up to defend you, only to realize they chose to stay silent? Thompson was different. He didn't bother hiding what he thought. A faint smirk crossed his face, as if everything was unfolding exactly the way he had long expected. No surprise, no discomfort, just confirmation that Juliet had finally been cornered. The room was still brightly lit, the food was still there, but the atmosphere had completely changed. Juliet looked around, at the familiar faces, the people she once believed would always stand by her side. But in that moment she realized she was alone. Not because no one was there, but because no one was truly standing with her. And it was that silence, not shouting, that made everything clearer than ever before. Sitting in that room, surrounded by the people she knew best, Juliet suddenly realized something she had always tried to avoid. Maybe they had never truly understood her. Not because she never spoke, but because they had never really listened. Have you ever tried to explain your life, only to realize the other person hears only what they want to hear? Juliet thought back to the times she shared about her work, her long, exhausting days, the things she was quietly proud of. But it all seemed to pass by quickly, like something unimportant. And then the conversation would always return to the same familiar topics: family, marriage, a stable life. Little by little, she stopped talking. Not because she had nothing left to say, but because she knew it would never be truly seen for what it was. In their eyes, Juliet was always someone missing something. But they never stopped to ask if they were the ones overlooking everything she already had. In that moment, within the heavy silence, Juliet didn't feel angry anymore. Only a cold, quiet clarity. She had spent too many years trying to be understood, while never truly being heard. And maybe, for the first time, she no longer felt the need to explain. The truth is, Juliet's life is nothing like what her family believes. In the city, she isn't a worrying 35-year-old woman who's still single. She is an independent woman with a stable job and a career that not everyone can achieve. Juliet works in project coordination and management, a role that demands precision, responsibility, and the ability to handle intense pressure. Her days are far from empty, as her family assumes. They are filled with meetings, plans, and critical decisions where one wrong step could change everything. Have you ever accomplished something you're proud of, but had no one truly understand its value? She bought her own home, not because someone helped her, not because of luck. It was the result of years of hard work, saving, and persistence. She has built a life for herself, her own space, a future she can clearly see. And yet, the irony is, none of it is ever enough in her family's eyes. Because they don't see what she has achieved, they only see what she doesn't have. And sometimes the most exhausting thing isn't failure, but having your success go unrecognized. There comes a moment when everything inside Juliet comes to a stop. No more trying to explain. No more polite smiles to brush things off. No more need to be accepted. Only a decision. Have you ever reached that limit? The point where you know that if you stay silent any longer, you'll lose yourself. Juliet takes a deep breath.